Hi, my name is Erica, and I agreed to do a sew along after a very warm response to my pattern M7482 that I made and posted to the McCalls pattern website on Facebook. I had several people to express an interest in learning how to make this pattern, so I contacted McCalls and received permission from them via email to use their pattern as a sew along to help some of you all who were interested in learning how to make this to do it. I don't do anything super special with knits, except I do not use a zigzag stitch. As soon as Coates and Clark released their Elo Flex thread, I started using it in straight seams. I have tested it. I love to run. I also do a lot of weightlifting. I've made 3 pairs of pants from the 7482 pattern already. I have tested them. One pair had the zigzag stitch in it because I made it before Coates and Clark released their Elo Flex to Joann Fabrics. And honestly, the pants were about the same as if they had the stretch stitch in them with the Elo Flex. I feel confident that I'm not going to split my seams when I'm doing squats in the gym, which for anybody who's done squats in the gym, that's like your worst fear ever, right? So anyway, I don't have to worry about that. So that is my first deviation. My second deviation comes when I start making the waistband. I like to add elastic. This pattern does not call for you to add elastic to the waistband, but I like to have it for the extra security. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but my clothes have this habit of wanting to go south when I start running if I don't put that extra elastic band in there to hold it at my waist. It's not a very comfortable feeling. Okay. So as you can see, I have already cut out my fabric. Very simple. I use a rotary cutter and these lovely pattern weights that I got at Home Depot. I think they're called washers. I just went and bought a box of them. They had some oily residue on them, so I threw them into my dishwasher and degreased them really well, and they are awesome. They hold the pattern down. That's the first thing that I do with knits. That helps me to be able to sew a knit effectively because I can cut it out and there's straight lines, and I don't have to worry if I cut off something really important because they bunched up, gathered up, or my pins didn't stay, or any of those other things that happen when you're dealing with a fabric that, as my mom calls it, likes to crawl around your cutting table. The second thing that I like to do, because I don't like to destroy my paper patterns, especially when I have one that I really enjoy making, I will make it so many times that my normal pattern paper that these come with will start to disintegrate. So I like to trace it out on medical paper, medical table paper. You can get this 4 rolls, a box of 4 rolls. I think I paid $28 last time I bought this. It's really easy to trace on. I mark everything on my piece of medical paper, and then I use it just like a paper pattern. But if this disintegrates, I can always make a new pattern. I'm cutting mine out by size 20. I have 46-inch hips. Shh, don't tell anybody. So I always cut out using my largest measurement. My hips are my largest measurement. My waist doesn't necessarily go with the measurement that my hips have. It's typically smaller than what the waist should be, so I'm not a standard pattern size. But what I do when I go to fit my fabrics is I'll add a dart in the seams for this pattern, like in the back, so that it'll bring the waist closer in so that it'll actually fit my body. If it's one of those that I don't want it to fit so close, because I'm not, let's face it, when you're wearing active wear, you're typically doing something active. If you're weightlifting with your active wear, you need to be able to see what your body's doing, and having spare fabric is not helpful because it makes you wonder what your hips are doing when you're doing squats, because you can't really see what your hips are doing if you've got all this extra fabric. So for these pants, I will pull out the extra fabric. For other pants, like office wear, sometimes I'll pull out the extra fabric depending on how they're supposed to fit. If it's a high-waisted pant and it's supposed to be more fitted, I'll pull out the extra fabric. But if they're not super fitted pants and they can flare from the waist down. I typically leave the extra fabric in so that I have some room to eat and feel comfortable. That's a secret. No, it's not. I'm kidding. So anyway, I'm going to do this video in a couple of different ways. I do apologize. I have never done a YouTube video for sewing or anything actually before. So this is going to be quite new for me. I've taken some time to review some of the other sew-alongs that have been happening over the last month and a half to 2 months since I promised that I would post this on Facebook. And I hope that this will be successful and that you all can get what you need out of this in order to completely make this pattern and enjoy it. So threading your machine with the Eloflex is just the same as threading your machine with any other type of thread. I have a Singer, so it's not as simple as just putting the thread in and letting it air thread. I do not know how it will react with one of those types of machines. However, I haven't read any bad reviews. So the first step is to take your pant front and back, and you're going to sew it at the bottom. As you can see, there's this little weird spot, and you're going to sew it there. I don't like pinning knit fabrics unless I absolutely have to, which I do for the waist so that I can stretch everything and have it matching where it's supposed to be matching. But for this, I don't need to pin this because it's only one spot, and hopefully it's not going to run too far away from me. So I just match it up right where it's supposed to match up at. This pattern calls for a 5/8 inch seam allowance, so I'm setting it up for that, and I'm just going to make my seam. The petal is in the wrong spot. And there is something wrong with my bobbin. That's what's wrong with my bobbin. It is not threaded properly. Okay. So take 2 on that seam because it's going to fall out. Much better. Okay. And before I forget, I also use the Eloflex on both my bobbin and my upper thread so that both of them are in there. As you can see, that seam stretches pretty a lot. The next part of the process, after you get your seam in and you've serged it, I like to go back and clean up all of my little extra threads. after I do this, my iron is currently heating up. After I give my seams a haircut, so that I don't have all of those extra threads hanging out, I like to press it open. I know that it's a knit and you don't probably have to do this step, but I just think that everything looks so much neater when you press your seams in and open. I blame my mother for teaching me this. Alright, now the one thing that I do like in these pants is I like to push the seam allowance that remains in them. I like to push that towards the back of the leg. I like all of my seam allowances pointing towards the back. So we have the first leg done. You'll repeat this process on the second leg, and then you're going to grab your inset piece. I like to use pins on this piece too. Again, knits are very finicky, and so when you start getting points that are very obvious like this, you have to be somewhat precise. Don't wrestle too much with the fabric, because the more you wrestle with it, the more it's going to make you angry. So, as you can see, my pattern pieces have a circle and a square here, and I have on this pattern piece a circle here and a square. When you're looking for the pattern pieces and how you're supposed to put them together, these circles and these squares show you where you're supposed to connect the pieces so that you can sew them together properly. There's my back leg. Here's my front leg pattern piece. Now, when I'm doing this type of piecing together of a pattern, I like to take a chalk marker and actually mark the spots on the pattern where I need to place the other piece. So here, one mark. Here is the second one. The back one. This one is here. And I do this on knits because, as discussed earlier, the more that you pin a knit and try to force it to do what you want it to do, the more the knit is just going to make you angry and it's not going to cooperate. So you have those pieces marked. So now I'm going to pull out my accent piece. Isn't that going to be pretty with this? And I'm going to mark the 3 spots from my pattern piece onto here. So my first mark here, one there, the other one is here. Okay. Now, I just have to match up the chalk markings.